Welcome back to our CKPG News Special with Mayor Shari Green. Shari, we were going to talk about the core review. About a year ago we sat down, you were only a few months into office, and the core review was very fresh on everybody's minds. We've heard a lot about it over the last 12 months, all about duplication, finding those duplications in services, efficiencies. Has it evolved the way you expected though?
It really has. It's exactly how I saw it unfolding. It's a lengthy process, and there's no question. It's been a big job within City Hall, a lot of staff involved working on the project. It's what the community sent me there to do. It's what I campaigned on. It's the commitment I made that we would evaluate what we do as a city and who does the work, what are the services, what are the levels that we expect for those services, and are we getting the best value for our tax dollar? And if we are, great, we're validated in some of those things that we're doing, and we've already seen that in some of the results. But we're also trying to be more efficient. How can we run this operation, whatever it might be, a specific area, in a different way that might be able to save us some money so that we can redirect those dollars into things that we know are underfunded, like our core infrastructure.
There were 100 and I think it was 93 opportunities identified in the KPMG
Yes.
report. That number got knocked down to about 30, I think, initially, and then down to 13 in the latest round. Now, those 13 ideas are being talked about, but what about the other 180?
Yes, exactly. Well, all 193 came to us after 6 months of extensive work with KPMG working with our staff. We've had a tremendous amount of public input. We had several workshops, and we had a lot of input from our staff, from our union members, the executive, our management staff, and from the community. And the 193 opportunities listed are all still on the table. What we've done is focus on initially the ones that we feel we need to tackle first, those items that are either a big ticket item or they're a high priority, because we need to know one way or another if we're moving forward in a certain direction. So we've begun the process of now looking at what those key opportunities are. Pine Valley Golf Course is one. Are we going to have a third-party operator run the pool or the Civic Center? Those kinds of things. So that work is just beginning with staff now to say, is this what you want, Council? And if you've indicated you want to explore this further, here's an implementation plan so that you can be fully informed about how this will work if you choose to go down this road. So they're just starting that work now, and we'll see some of those come back probably in January. A few more complex items like the pool will come back a bit later in the spring, I would expect. And for me, the other 180 items that are sitting out there, we will address all of them in the coming weeks and months. So the committee needs to reconvene, pull the next set of things. What's next on the list that we should be exploring while staff's off doing this work? And some of those things are 2013 budget items. So in the next short while at Council, we'll see some results from the committee that we'll have worked through late December to try to see what we can do next. And there's a lot of things that we've had an opportunity to implement, no-brainers, if you will, because of the impetus that the core review brought and the analysis that KPMG was able to work with staff on. So for example, in our development services department, they looked at fees and charges around building permits and development opportunities and said, you know, we haven't actually looked at this in 9 years. And it's time to change the fees. So they did that work. They didn't need to be told by KPMG, you should go do that work. They knew they needed to. So they just got busy and did it. Brought it to finance and audit. It came to the council table, totally supported. And that alone, the amount of revenue that's going to be generated from that in 2013 is almost going to pay for the entire core review budget itself, that one item.
Well, that's pretty remarkable. How much do you expect to save in the first budget year? Next February, next spring, how much do you expect to save from this core review process?
Well, Council won't decide until early January what the 2013 budget items are, so I can't answer that quite yet because we need to have confirmation of what we've selected. But overall, we were looking at anywhere from a low of, I think, $5 million to a high of $11 million a year in annual operating savings if we were to do everything on the list. And we know we're not going to do everything on the list, but there's no question there are significant savings to be found in the operational budget by adjusting some of our charges and some of our fees that we have. There might be some things that we don't fund at the same level we used to. So we've got to look at what all of that is. And at the end of the day, it's never been about cutting the budget or cutting the tax bill. It's about, here's the pot of money we have. Are we using it in the best way possible? Because if we've got some dollars being spent that we know need to get moved into another area, what is that? And for me, it's always been about paving our roads, getting our core infrastructure properly and sustainably funded.
At the same time, though, I think a lot of people, the tax bill is the key point.
Sure.
How much of a tax impact can they expect to see out of this core review? Will
Well,
they see it initially? Will they see it down the road?
Well, you know, it's interesting because last year when we talked at this time, we didn't have our 2012 budget done yet, and we were faced with almost a 7% tax increase, and ultimately in January, shortly after you and I spoke last year, we ended up eliminating 28 positions at the city, which was a pretty monumental decision to have had to make so early on in my mandate. It was tough to do. But the reality is that saved a significant amount of dollars. We were able to disperse some of the work in some areas. And I think that for most taxpayers, they saw very minimal impact to that decision that had been made. So we didn't want to do that this year. We really wanted to say, this is why we're doing a core review. Let's look at what we have so we can figure out what our best situation is for the budget, and we need to set our tax rates accordingly. And I don't think anybody ever said it would be a zero. We know that CPI is something people kind of gauge as a reasonable benchmark for where a tax increase should be year over year. And when our budget in, I think, late October was a draft presentation to us, it was 7.23%. Again, because we have rising costs. We've got hydro and utility that rates have gone up. We've got our contracts all in place with amounts that are expected to be gained there. So we know we're not going to come in at 7.23. We're going to find ways to whittle that down. But we're trying to do it without having the same dramatic impact we had last January, which was boom, 28 positions gone. We want to make sure we're making decisions in the core review that allow us to make some changes in other ways so that we can deliver a tax rate people can afford.
And at what point does the core review wrap up?
Well, I think it's going to be some time. The process with KPMG has wrapped up. They're done their work. They've handed it over. It's in the hands of the committee now. And the committee is taking it in chunks, if you will, chewing off a bit at a time, because we can't just hand 193 things to staff at once and say, here you go figure it out. The committee is discussing it. Council owns this core review, and the decisions around it are ultimately ours. So we would like input from staff to be able to tell us, okay, if you want to go down that road, here's how the implementation plan could look like for you. And then we'll make those decisions. So we're just in the beginning of that. We haven't seen those things come back yet.
Are we talking a year, 2 years?
I think through the rest of this year, you're going to see the rest of it. I'd like to see us be done sort of analyzing the 193 in sections, hopefully by late spring, maybe summer. It's just really going to depend on our ability with our staff to bring back the work we are giving them in a timely manner while they still run the city.
That's right, there is
they
another
still
job.
have their regular jobs to do.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about everybody's favorite topic, roads.